And we welcome you back. I'm Rick Sanchez. I want to introduce you to something now. It's a big part of this conversation that we're having now, which many say actually started in Pennsylvania. It was the race that didn't involve John McCain. It was between Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama in the primaries at the time. And one lone voice stood up at an AFL-CIO meeting and said something that at the time may have been very controversial, but watch the reaction that he got. This is back in July. Take a listen.
There's not a single good reason for any worker, especially any union member, to vote against Barack Obama. And there's only one really bad reason to vote against Barack Obama. And that's because he's not white. And I want to talk about that issue because I saw it myself in Pennsylvania in the primary. I went back to my hometown.
Isn't that something? You almost kind of get chills when you watch that. I mean, not playing. He made the comment, then a couple of guys stood up and started applauding, and then a couple more, and then a couple more, before the entire auditorium was standing up and applauding. Interesting. Let's bring somebody in now. His name is Ben Cooter Jones. And with a name like that, he knows a thing or two about Southern voters. And he's here to tell you right now that Southern voters are not getting a fair shake in all of this. He thinks, as a matter of fact, that the Bradley effect won't come into play in November. Joining us now is Ben Cooter Jones. He's joining us by phone. Amplify that thought, if you would, former Congressman Jones and former actor from Dukes of Hazzard.
Oh, I sure will, Rick. You know, the Bradley effect took place. That was in California. You know, down south, people will pretty much tell you what they think. If they say they're going to vote for Barack Obama, they're going to vote for Barack Obama. Dr. King, who was a Southerner, you know, he said, and as we all know, racial prejudice is everywhere, and people will hear my accent and assume something about me.
Mm-hmm.
But Dr. King said that, you know, in the South, people don't like, the white people don't like our race, but they like us individually. In the North, it's the reverse. They like the race, but they don't like you individually. And I think there was something to that. We have a history in the South of brotherhood and fellowship, and even though that history is somewhat, you know, wrong-headed, and it involved white supremacy and all of that, the races here have shared a culture for hundreds of years. And in the last 40 years, since the Civil Rights Movement, we have come together.
Let me ask you.
Southerners are generally conservative, so that's why they tend to vote Republican. But I would say to you, Rick, there's less racism here than there are in most places in the United States.
Let me ask you this question, because I was having this conversation with our staff today, as well as with the 23,000 people who Twitter with me and the 1,500 or 4,000 or so on MySpace and Facebook. And this got to be a real
heated... Just a popular guy, Rick.
Well, I don't know. I think it's a popular idea. But is it possible, stay with me here, that this has less to do with race and more to do with people just being a little uncomfortable with what's unfamiliar? After all, listen to Michelle Obama's own words. When I met the man, she says, I thought he was kind of weird. And what kind of name is Barack Obama? There was a certain hesitation in her at the time. Are we confusing the two things?
No, we're not. We're getting used to Barack Obama, the guy. America's become very familiar with him. I remember him speaking at that convention a few years ago, and I said, where did this guy come from? Venus? You know, I mean, what? But he is a remarkable man, and he's a brilliant guy.
But what about people who are unfamiliar with him? What about the guy who listens to Rush Limbaugh and watches Fox News all day long?
Well, they're not going to vote for Barack Obama anyway. They're right-wing people. They're extremely conservative, and they're not going to support Barack Obama anyway. That crowd, that's the choir there. That's the one that Sarah Palin and them are preaching to today. I just heard John McCain talking about blaming the entire planetary monetary meltdown and all of the economic problems on Barney Frank. Now that's just silly. And Sarah Palin running around trying to fire people up on these visceral issues. That dog don't hunt.
To your
Nobody cares. This is about the economy. This is about jobs. And if your car's in the ditch, Rick, and the guy that pulls up next to you looks funny, but he's willing to get you out of the ditch, you wouldn't care if he was black and green and white and had polka dots and candy-colored stripes. You know, he's the guy who's going to get you out of the ditch. Barack Obama's talking sense. And what's happening in the South, and you can see it right in these polls, is there's a shift as people become more familiar with him. And if this economy gets worse, Barack Obama is going to win Virginia. In part, what he has done is respected the South. Unlike past Democratic candidates who didn't even care or didn't even try to compete.
Let's leave it at that before we get into past Democratic candidates. But you've been extremely interesting in the way you've made your points, and the one about the ditch, I think that might make sense or resonate with some folks who are watching us now. Ben Cooter Jones, thanks for being with us, sir. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.